أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا ربي لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلمته سبحان الله العظيم اللهم صل وسلم على نبينا محمد لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbin wa atubu ilayh. Let's start with a few du'as of knowledge. I want everybody to recite A'udhu Billah, Bismillah, and the du'as of ilm, okay? Rabbi zidni ilma, Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli waj'al li waziran min ahli. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'an wa amalan mutaqabbalan wa rizqan tayyiba. Allah, we all ask you to grant us beneficial ilm, beneficial knowledge, and deeds that are accepted by you, and a pure provision, rizq that is pure. Ameen. So we are focusing on the story of Ibrahim as salam. Today the ayat that we are going to study are from, which surah are they from? Can anybody read? I want you to read the number of the juz so that you all know, and then the number of the surah here. Can anybody read this out loud?
I think it's Surah Al-An'am and Juz 7th.
Excellent. This is another part of the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We find that, just to briefly recall what we had studied last time, we had discussed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran plays a glowing tribute to the wisdom, bravery, dedication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to the progress of humanity that was done by Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents Ibrahim alayhi salam as a role model for us. He is one of the great 5 prophets. We would be really lucky to be following his legacy, to be following in his footsteps. As you remember, he was born nearly 4,000 years ago in the city of Ur in what is now called Iraq. And last time we had studied, that city was a famous center for the worshipping of stars, the moon, the sun. And those people had started to believe this is how shirk, how worshipping others besides Allah can make one vulnerable to so much confusion by shaitan and by one's own nafs and by one's own thinking. That instead of looking deeply and realizing that all of these celestial bodies are created by somebody and I should be worshipping him, I should be looking for that Rabb, that creator, the person who commits shirk gets entangled in those bodies. So the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam were worshipping the stars, the moon, the sun, and they also believed these celestial bodies had influence on their destiny, that their khair and shar, meaning their goodness and their trials, were in the control of these celestial bodies. The story that we had studied last time about Ibrahim alayhi salam was when he had this conversation, several conversations with his people, asking them about why are they worshipping those stone idols. And then eventually he had broken the smaller stone idols when the people had been away for an event. And that entire scene, the way it's played out in the Quran, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala narrates it for us, it ended in him being thrown into the fire. Today we are looking at a different part of the story. Maybe this is a part that comes earlier. And this is the part where Ibrahim alayhi salam is having these conversations with his people, and he's trying to convince them by using logic, inviting them to look at these heavenly bodies and to really realize that they within themselves hold no power. So we are going to read those ayat. We're going to start with ayat number 74. Does anybody want to recite this first ayat?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال إبراهيم لأبيه آذر أتتخذ أصناما آلهة إني أراك وقومك في ضلال مبين وكذلك نري إبراهيم ملكوت السماوات والأرض وليكون من الموقنين فلما جن عليه الليل رأى كوكبا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لا أحب الآفلين فلما رأى القمر بازغا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الضالين فلما رأى الشمس بازغا قال هذا ربي هذا أكبر فلما أفلت قال يا قوم إني بريء مما تشركون إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين وحاجه قومه قال تحاجوني في الله وقد هداني ولا أخاف ما تشركون به إلا أن يشاء ربي شيئا وسع ربي كل شيء علما أفلا تتذكرون.
Jazakallahu khairan kaseeran. MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you with more ilm and this beautiful recitation. MashaAllah. How does this conversation start? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ آذَرَ أَتَتَّخِذُ أَصْنَامًا آلِهَةً إِنِّي أَرَاكَ وَقَوْمَكَ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Tell them about Ibrahim, who said to Azar, his father, are you taking idols for gods? Surely I see you and your people are in manifest error. So who was Azar? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives his name here. People say, we find that in some tafsir, that his name was different. This was actually his title. The city of Ur has been excavated. There have been a lot of books written about this. In one of the books that traces the history of the city, we find that this was a nation, this was an area that used to worship a lot of gods, maybe even 50,000 gods. And different cities also had their own like head god. And then people in their own homes and businesses worshipped a lot of idols. The central city, like the capital, like the main business center in this region was Ur. And this is where Ibrahim AS was from and his family. It is said that there was a kind of societal structure there in which there was a class system. And there were 3 classes. So there was the top class, which were the elites. These were people of influence. They were the decision makers. Ibrahim AS' family and his father, they belonged to that elite. Then there was a second class. These were the people who were into businesses, who were tradespeople. And then the third level of society there were the slaves or people who were very poor, people who were economically dependent. So we see that Ibrahim AS comes from a family of influence. What does that tell you? It tells you that he had a lot to lose if he made those people angry. And we did see that in the part of the story that we covered last time. They tried to take his life. What more can somebody do? And yet we see that this recognition within him, this acknowledgement within him always, that no, all of this is wrong. There is only one God. That did not allow him to keep quiet, even in the face of all of the societal pressure, his own position, because sometimes people don't do amar bil ma'roof and nahi anil munkar. They don't invite to the good and they don't stop others from doing something wrong because they have power, they have a position, they have authority, and they don't want to lose it. So the fear of losing what you have sometimes stops us from taking a stand for the truth, from the right thing. And yet that's not the story that we are seeing in Ibrahim AS. He's like this lone shining star in that very, very dark region. and he takes on his father and his qawm, his people. So this is a conversation, and we are seeing again different strategies that he's using. But he declares openly that I see you and your people in manifest error. Like this is all misguided. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَذَلِكَ نُرِي إِبْرَاهِيمَ مَلَكُوتَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلِيَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُوقِنِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we showed Ibrahim the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, as we show you with examples from nature, so that he became one of the firm believers. So what do we understand? We understand that he was always on tauheed. Tawhid means to believe in one God only, to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only. So while he is surrounded by people who are worshipping hundreds and thousands of gods all around him, he is on tawheed. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows him, reveals to him through examples from nature all around, so that he gets to the level of yaqeen, certainty, conviction, like nobody can move him. It's like the proof is right in front of you. So he was always on tawheed. He always believed only in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intensified that tawheed, brought it to an even higher level by showing him proofs from the universe, by making him understand those things which the others were also seeing, but not understanding their true reality. So the people who were worshipping the sun and the moon and the stars, they were both looking at the same thing. Yet he understood their reality in a totally different way. While they got lost in all those heavenly bodies, they got impressed by them, and they thought, they can, these, the tree or the idol or the water or the sun or the moon drive my destiny. He was able to see beyond that and realize that no, our destiny lies only in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created the heavens and the earth. So now we are going to see 3 examples of how he uses his power of observation and shows the people around him, how he lays his argument using rationale, using a logic that everybody can understand, and how he makes them realize through observing signs in the universe that there is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how he's trying to invite them toward tawheed. And we will see that tawheed and shirk are on opposite poles, right? So tawheed means believing in one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And shirk means that there are like innumerable gods. Whatever you see, you start worshiping that, and you start getting impressed by that, and you start believing that my destiny is in the control of that thing. So the first example, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلُ رَأَى كَوْكَبًا قَالَ هَذَا رَبِّي فَلَمَّا أَفَلَ قَالَ لَا أُحِبُّ الْآفِلِينَ. When the night drew its shadow over him, he saw a star, and he said, this is my Rabb. But when it set, he said, I do not love to worship such a God. That fades away. So one example, one observation of these heavenly bodies, that he draws the attention of his people and his father and his family, those around him too, is that of a star. And he's like asking them, so is that what you're saying? Like, that's my Rabb? And then as the star sets, he says, like, really? You think this can be a Rabb? The star that sets and fades away? And then we realize that the head god of the city where he lived, of the city of Ur, was the moon. So although people worshipped so many other deities and gods, they believed in the moon, like with this intensity that he's like the head of everything. So another example that he gives, the second example we'll discuss today. فلما رأى القمر بازغا قال هذا ربي فلما أفل قال لئن لم يهدني ربي لأكونن من القوم الضالين. So the second example, afterwards, he saw the moon shining. He said, "This is my Rabb." But when it also set, he cried, "If my Rabb does not guide me, I shall certainly become one of those who go astray. If my Rabb hadn't guided me, I would have been like with these people, who are so confused, who are so misguided." So basically, he's telling the people, like, really, do you believe in the moon? The moon sets. How can it be God when it disappears? A God cannot disappear. A God cannot just set away. The third example. فلما رأى الشمس بازغة قال هذا ربي هذا أكبر فلما أفلت قال يا قوم إني بريء مما تشركون. Then when he saw the sun with its brighter shine, the sun is like bigger, it's brighter, it's shining. And he said, "This must be my Rabb. It's larger than the other two." But when it also set, he exclaimed, he just cried out, "Oh, my people, I'm done with your shirk. I'm done." Like, look at yourselves. You're not seeing the irony of your own claims that these are gods? So I've tried to convince you from the first example of the star, from the second example of the moon, from the third example of the sun, which also sets, it just disappears, it goes away. It has no power to bring that heat or that light or that warmth in the night. Do you really want to worship these? He says, "Inni bari'um mimma tushrikun." I do this bara'at, like I absolve myself. I step away from you. I distance myself from you and your beliefs. You and I, we are different. I don't believe in any of these things. I will not commit shirk. So then what does he do? What is he telling them? How is he different? Who is he going to worship? Who is he going to commit to? The next ayat tells us. He says, إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض حنيفا وما أنا من المشركين. Beautiful ayat. He says, as far as I'm concerned, إني وجهت وجهي للذي فطر السماوات والأرض. I turn my face, being upright, to him who has created the heavens and the earth. وَمَا أَنَا مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. I am not of the mushrikeen. I am not of those who commit shirk, who associate others with Allah. What is this word? Wajh. Inni wajjahtu wajhiya. So this is wajh. One of the meanings of wajh is your face. And wajh is used in really beautiful and very important ways. Our face also tells us that this is our identity, right? What do we have on a passport? We have our picture. It helps identify us. And this is where we have our most important sensory organs. Our hearing is here, our sight is here, our speech is here, touch is here, sense of smell, all of those. And then we understand that when we are trying to focus on somebody, for example, during a conversation, what do? Do we turn our face toward that person or away from it? We turn toward that person. We make eye contact. So sometimes it's also used to show focus. So when he says, Inni wajjahtu wajhiya lillazi, that I turn my face, meaning I turn my identity, I turn my focus, I turn my attention, I focus it completely and completely on the one who created the heavens and the earth, not on the beings that were created, but the creator. So we can understand it. If we want to walk in the path of Ibrahim AS and draw closer to Allah like he did, inshallah, one day, this is beautiful for us to turn our face to Allah, meaning our identity should reflect that we believe in that one God. Our eyes should watch what he has made halal for us. Our ears should hear what he has made halal for us. Our speech should reflect that we are Muslims. We submit to him. We work for him. We worship him, nobody else. We are distinct from all of the millions and billions of gods and their worshippers. And then another word that we understand is Haneefa, Haneef. Who is Haneef? Haneef means somebody who is completely focused on one thing. So a mushirk, somebody who commits shirk, can be scared of innumerable things. For example, all of the superstitions that you see in people who would commit shirk. Did the black cat cross in front of me? Oh my God, it's going to be a bad day. What does my horoscope say? What did he tell me? Did I walk under this or that? Did the mirror crack? Am I living on the 13th floor? Is it Friday the 13th? So there's a lot of fear. And a Haneef is focused only on Allah. He or she fears only Allah. Mushrik looks to get reward or khair or goodness from innumerable sources. Oh, that person can help me. My risk, my earning comes from my job. So I must keep my employers happy. I want to be healthy. I have to depend on the doctor, on the medicine. I want people's approval. I'm a social influencer. I must change my viewpoint based on what people are telling me today. And the Haneef knows all of the goodness that comes to him comes only and only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's fearless about everyone else. He becomes fearless. She doesn't care about any of those superstitions. They hold on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, there was a time several years ago that when you would be interviewed for important jobs, sometimes they would ask the question, can you multitask? And it was considered like a really cool thing in those days if you were able to multitask, meaning do multiple things at one time. And subhanAllah, now the research is showing how wrong that attitude was. Because it shows that if you are trying to look at multiple things, focus at multiple things at the same time, you're going to make so many more mistakes. But if you focus on one thing, you can do that thing more efficiently and at a much higher quality. It's like, for example, if you're trying to cook and watch a baby who's crying and iron your clothes and be on the phone, then you're more likely to burn that dish. If you're driving and at the same time you're texting, you're talking to somebody, you're looking at and reading an ad that's on the road, it's much likelier that you're gonna, cause a road traffic accident or hurt somebody.